Hi Caroline, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to see you, Mark.
We're dealing with quite a big question as well, aren't we? The big golden question as to when is the best time to start investing in property. There's so much in the media at the moment about the property market. What's going to happen? Have we got a crash coming up? Is there going to be a downturn?
It's very noisy out there in the marketplace, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's a
very
lot
much
of
so.
chitter chatter of a crash, and I always think it's funny that the media basically talk us into recession, don't they?
Yes,
To get us
exactly. Yeah,
ready. It's like,
yeah,
okay, this
yeah,
whole concept of I think I should maybe wait until there's a crash, or I'm going to wait until
yeah,
the market's cooled off. I
yeah,
hear that a lot, so I think it is good that we tackle it
yeah.
today in any way we can.
And like I mentioned, that the property market does or has historically moved in quite predictable patterns, hasn't it? You know, it goes in sort of
Absolutely.
cycles, and whether or not recent events have sort of thrown that out a little bit, but I think it's worth reflecting on the fact that we talk about there being unprecedented circumstances, but in yes, COVID itself was obviously unprecedented, but the market conditions that it created
Mm.
have been seen before, will be seen again, and it sort of follows those predictable cycles.
And even I have to say, when I first sort of stepped into the arena of trying to educate myself in property
Yeah,
investing, I'm sure one of my trainers said every 18 years there's going to be a big recession.
yeah,
So that 18 years has always been in the back of my head.
yeah,
And I think the poignant question he asked was, are you going to wait for another 18 years before you actually do this?
yeah,
But this whole concept of the 18-year cycle is that there's a little boost, a little growth, and then a little dip. It maybe flatlines a little, and then there's a real boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
and then that crash that they talk about. And I think that language, crash,
yeah,
that sounds dangerous,
yes,
right? It sounds like something you should try and avoid.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
in actual
yeah,
fact, that's really when I get excited. This
yeah,
boom
exactly.
stuff is annoying me.
Yeah, it's
You've
been
got
difficult
people.
market for investors, hasn't it? The last 18 months to 2 years, because it's been such a seller's market, you know. So actually, yeah, the thought of a drop in property prices and property sitting on the market for a little bit longer, if anything, that creates better conditions for us to go out and start shopping, doesn't it? And better position for us to negotiate from than when it's a seller's market.
Yes. I think the other thing that we need to consider and maybe convey for people is that even if the market is going up, that's not necessarily a bad time to buy.
Yeah,
I guess if you were to be hypercritical and say, okay, if I could pinpoint the worst possible time to buy, it would be at the absolute peak height
yeah,
of the market. And we
yeah,
ain't there yet. We're
yeah,
definitely not there. We're probably at least a couple, maybe 2, 3 years away from that. So
yeah,
we've got some breathing space.
yeah,
And even in a rising market, there's deals to be had,
yeah,
um, ways that we can structure things. Because if you think about the system we use of getting your money into the deal and then get your money out, we've got time to still do that and actually
yeah,
capitalize on the fact that it's moving in an upward trend. So it
yeah,
helps getting your money out of the deal. So we
yeah,
can, we can look at that in a positive way rather than thinking, oh, I've probably paid too much for it. Actually, if you get all your money out of the deal and it cash flows, let's not split hairs about it and sweat the
yeah,
small stuff.
yeah,
Because you'll never dip your toe in if you keep thinking this is the best possible price I could get this for now.
yeah.
That's just false, right? It's just
And the principles of you make your money when you buy and you add value, they hold true no matter what the market's doing, don't they? And I guess it's just a case then of potentially pivoting your strategy or identifying what strategy will work in that particular market conditions. Because I think, particularly I see this with students looking to get their foot on the ladder, as it were, and take their first steps into professional property investment. They really beat themselves up, if you like, around what's going to be my strategy, what's going to be the strategy, as if once I've started on that path, I can't go in any other direction, and that's me. And so they really procrastinate over, is this the right thing to do? But in reality, I know our strategy's changed multiple times over the years. not just in response to market conditions, but it might be that your circumstances change, what you need your properties to do for you at different stages in your journey changes. They serve
Yes.
a purpose up to a point, but then your strategy changes. So in many ways, it's about identifying what strategies are working right now, as opposed to feeling like you're committed. And, if that's the case, you might be a bit hesitant about getting started, I guess.
Well, and also if you start now, like whatever happens in the future, there, like you say, there's flexibility. So if you amass properties that maybe aren't performing as well as you could get in another market 2 years down the line, you can
Yeah,
liquidate them, and you can reshuffle, you can re-leverage, you
yeah,
can do stuff with it. It's better to have the assets that you can shuffle around than not have
yeah,
anything at all to get
yeah,
going with.
yeah,
So this, seller's market is great if you have got any assets that you think, actually, I'd maybe like to, liquidate that and use the capital in a much bigger, sexier
yeah.
deal over here.
Exactly.
Um,
Well, I think
well,
I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but and I think we didn't deliberately set out to do this, but I think it's a nice illustration of exactly what you're talking about. That we are just in the process of finalising the sale of 4 properties in our portfolio, and once they're sold, that will be every property that we purchased in order to get to our financial security figure. We will have sold.
there we go.
Which I think is a really interesting. And again, I'm not saying that's the way. I'm not advocating that you must do that, but it just shows you that actually those properties have been very successful within their life cycle. So an awareness of the market conditions and what strategies are working right now is really sensible, and really useful for you as an investor. But I know when we first started out, I'm not advocating that you should ignore the market and what the market's doing, but I don't remember that being a major factor in
Yeah.
why we started investing in property. Whether or not it was the right time or the wrong time for us, it was absolutely the right time because of what we needed to achieve with our income and with our personal situation and everything else. So
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of people sweating the small stuff.
yeah,
As human beings, our default is to dot all I's, cross all T's before we actually do something a bit different. And with you, you're just saying, actually, we probably didn't even really look at the market. It was more about what do we need here now? I
yeah,
mean, I started in 2000. We went on our 3-day course in November 2008. Everyone around us was like, "What are you doing? Property's crashing. This is the
yeah,
worst time to get into it." And I was just like, "Yeah, but I need to do
yeah,
something,"
yeah,
right? And I tell you what, back then the challenges were money. Money was seriously scarce, but there was plenty of deals. And what you've got in the current market is less ready available deals at the kind of BMV level, but you got
yeah,
shitloads of money that you can get your hands on. So it's
yeah,
either one or two of those things, and it's completely supply and demand. And I
yeah,
think as a business, if you think about, and I went big picture on it because I'm not a detail person, I thought the population in the UK is growing. More and more people are visiting here, and we're a little island and they ain't building enough houses. So if you think about it in that respect, people are always going to need somewhere to live because it's one of the fundamentals for human survival. And they ain't building enough houses for people to live in. So that's a kind of good business to be in, where the
yeah,
demand is high and the supply is low.
yeah,
Let's get in. And I think if you can maybe get your head around the bigger picture element of it, it
yeah,
will all absolutely level out. Property in the UK, I always like to think about the psychology behind statements that people make.
yeah,
And, we've all heard people saying, "Oh, there's just no deals out
yeah,
there."
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
"Oh, okay. So what you're really telling me is you haven't actually got off your butt to find them."
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, "Oh, every offer is rejected." Well, are you really following up on them the way that you
yeah,
should?
yeah,
How many offers are you actually putting out there? Are you just putting a
yeah,
couple?
yeah,
So there are statements that will tell you a kind of undercurrent out there. I remember the very first property sort of networking event I went to. So I was properly green. I hadn't really started doing it sensibly. And the woman who was taking the networking event said, I'm not buying at the moment. I think the mortgage arrangement fees that the banks are asking for is ludicrous. It's scandalous, and I'm not going to pay it. I remember sitting there thinking, is this the networking event for me? Because
Yeah.
got the person's at the front going, now's not the time to buy because the mortgage arrangement fees are too high. And you're like, nah,
Yeah.
that's really like looking at the cost of the shovel
Yeah.
and while you're digging for the gold. That's ridiculous. And that kind of mentality is someone who's never really going to go at it and make a success of it anyway, is it? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
pieces.
So does that really sort of bring us to the conclusion that the best time to invest is now, essentially? It's always now, because ultimately you're just going to be second guessing yourself and chasing your own tail, aren't you?
The more you know about structuring and setting up your deals at the beginning and making your money at that point, the more
Yeah.
confident and comfortable you are that actually it doesn't really matter massively about what the market does. All
Yeah.
it means is there's going to be a bigger influx of amateurs coming in and a bigger influx of
Mm.
amateurs leaving the market. And that's the only real difference we see, Mark, when
Mm.
there's big fluctuations in movement.
But it is funny. You mentioned it at the beginning. It is funny how the market and the media and everything else creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
So all the sort of media sort of sensationalist reporting about a crash, and they use lots of emotive language like that, like you said, it creates hesitancy in the market, which ultimately creates that condition. But in reality, as investors, that's when we need to get active. That's when we need to be really getting out there, hunting the deals, finding distressed landlords and distressed sellers, as well as distressed properties, and looking for opportunities within that, properties that are coming back to the market. But also the power of network,
Yeah.
and actually being around other people, other investors who are doing what we're doing, who are out and actively investing right now, so that you can understand what strategies are working, learn from other people who are out there mixing it at the moment in the current market conditions. What's working? What are they focusing on? And
Yeah.
that's going to give you a pretty good steer, rather than relying on information fed to you by the media, to get part of a community that is actually focused on finding the opportunities within the current market.
And I love talking to all the different agents, the commercial agents, the resi agents, they're the ones literally on the ground day by day by day. They're the ones that can say, actually, one bed flats are a bit sticky on the market right now, but the 2-bed houses are flying.
Yeah.
And that kind of information, that intel
Yeah.
is really handy for the micro stuff that you're going
Yeah.
to be working within.
Yeah.
But where you can get a really good indicators from your brokers, what are the banks thinking? The
Yeah.
banks are the ones that are going to give you the biggest indicator about what's coming.
Yeah.
And when you can still get pretty cheap long-term fixed deals from a bank,
Yeah.
then the bank doesn't think interest rates are going to go anywhere too high too soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just knowing these little places to look for snippets of information which help you
Yeah.
make your business decisions. And if you're a nervous investor, well, fix all your mortgages if you're worried about interest rates. You can
Yeah.
fix them for 10 years. I mean, it's not the best rate, but you can fix them for 10 years if you're that worried. There's lots and lots of little interesting indicators out there. And I'm
Yeah.
excited about the next 5 years. I think the next 5 years are going to be phenomenal for
Yeah.
property investors.
Yeah, people who've started their investment journey over the last couple of years
Yeah.
are gonna, I would imagine, over the next 2 or 3 years, have a whole different experience of what it's like to invest in property, and when the emphasis shifts a little bit back towards the buyer and the investor again. So that will
Yeah.
be a nice change.
Well, every time I'm training people, it's like there's 2 key skills you have to have. You have to know how to source the deals, and you
Yeah,
have to know how to source the money. If you
yeah,
nail both of those skills, it does not matter what the market's doing because
yeah,
you'll be all right. You
yeah.
can do deals regardless.
Cool.
Um, Great.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a good message for us to finish off. Hopefully that gives people a little bit of a positive boost and a bit of reassurance if they're feeling a little bit nervous around the stuff they're hearing in the media and what have you. You know, that's certainly our approach, our mindset, and you know, I think that's going to be a useful message for people as we sort of go through this slightly uncertain time of what's the market going to do.
Yeah, uncertainty brings opportunities.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you for your input, Caroline. That's been awesome. And I will catch up with you again soon.
See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Hi guys.
We're a collective of independent property investors who are active in today's market.
I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about flipping property, including how I'm making over £20,000 from this project here.
And we're showing others the tricks of the trade and how you can create financial independence for yourself through property investment.
Because if it works once, it can work 20 times.
So this is where you lean on your mentors through these projects. This is obviously something we can help with, a property wealth system, and we love to get involved in these types of projects. So feel free to get involved.